aka Comaverse. Now 3 months ago, the Hidden One dropped a video on how Watch Dogs died. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I loved the Watch Dogs games when I first hopped on them, but after a little while, they just weren't feeling the same. Hopefully I can finally get the Let's Play done eventually, but I mean, let's get into this video right here, and maybe it'll motivate me to get back on them.
Watch Dogs is dead. And I mean that in the literal sense. Since Watch Dogs Legion released back in 2020, the franchise has been very quiet. And it is reported that the franchise is dead and buried. But how did we get to this point? That's what I want to go over in this video. Back in 2012, something quite big happened. Ubisoft took to the E3 stage and revealed a brand new IP that nobody saw coming, and that was Watch Dogs. And instantly it grabbed everyone's attention. It looked like a dark, tech-driven thriller where you could hack an entire city. This could be traffic lights, mobile phones, cameras, even any of the people you see walking around, and get access to their personal information, which I do actually have a series on that very thing, by the way. The first Watch Dogs game looked like a next-gen revolution at the time, something that could stand toe-to-toe with GTA 5. But, you know, with more brains over bullets. By the time the game launched in 2014, it became Ubisoft's fastest selling game ever, breaking day one records and moving millions of copies. The trailers had worked, the concept had caught fire. Ubisoft was convinced Watch Dogs was not intended to be a one-hit wonder, as Ubisoft saw it as the future. Then came Watch Dogs 2 in 2016. Now gone was the very dark and depressing Aiden Pierce, replaced by Marcus Holloway, and a more colourful, vibrant San Francisco. The game
I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I'm hoping there are not too many spoilers, because I am still stuck on Aiden Pierce's game right now. But seeing that they switch up their character gives me a lot of hope, you know? They don't just try to bring the same story from here onto the next game. They bring you something fresh. So I am very excited to get to Watch Dogs 2.
Aiden Pierce, replaced by Marcus Holloway, and a more colourful, vibrant San Francisco. The gameplay was notably smoother, the world was livelier, and DedSec felt like a modern day digital rebellion, instead of this secret hacking underground group. By all accounts, Watch Dogs 2 was the most polished game in the trilogy, and many people who played it often loved it. In fact, it's my favourite entry in the franchise. But here's the thing with Watch Dogs 2 that not many people realize. Most people did not in fact play Watch Dogs 2. The shadow of Watch Dogs 1's broken promises loomed large. Watch Dogs 2 underperformed at launch, and it took years just to match a fraction of the original sales. Now,
the hype I've been hearing about Watch Dogs, the original, and then Watch Dogs Legions is uncomparable to the talk I've been hearing about Watch Dogs 2, you know? Nobody talks about that game right there, which is wild, you know? Watch Dogs Legions came out, they had like Idris Elba and that thing, so it had a little bit of hype for me personally, but I might be the worst person to give an opinion on this right here, since I've played so little when it comes to Watch Dogs.
Now, no way was this game a failure creatively, but instead commercially. Ubisoft saw it as a red flag. Of course, fast forward to 2020 and Watch Dogs 2 has sold over 10 million copies. And speaking of 2020, a new Watch Dogs game was released during that time. And this one was Watch Dogs Legion. A very, let's just say, ambitious experiment, where the entire gameplay loop was to play as anybody. No main protagonist, just a city full of potential characters to choose from. But with no strong character lead and a very weak supporting cast of side characters, the game struggled to find soul. The systems were clever, but the story was flat. And once again, the game under-delivered on the promise. Fast forward to
it seems like they were just trying to do a little bit too much right there. I like the idea that you can control so many different people, but in a game like this, I mean there are too many options. I'm just putting it out there. I know we've been watching a lot of Walking Dead videos. We've been playing a lot of Walking Dead recently, but like, if they ever do drop another Walking Dead, let me know if I'm crazy or not. Comment your opinion on this right here. But if you can focus on any character and that could be your main, like you choose at the start and that's your main character, wouldn't the game be a little bit more fun? Let's just put it out there right now. The amount of replayability that would create, unthinkable.
But the story was flat. And once again, the game under-delivered on the promise. Fast forward to now in 2025, and Watch Dogs has quietly faded away from the spotlight. There is no new game in sight. There's been no announcement at all. The social media pages are silent, and there is barely any conversation in the Watch Dogs community. There is also no strong fan base for this franchise anymore. So how did we get here? How did one of Ubisoft's boldest ideas end up dying just after one damaging misstep?
Can we just pause it right there? Bold fan base, that's a little bit of a stretch. I know a lot of people now, maybe we wouldn't call them a fan base, because the people I know were like a handful, right? Maybe 5 to 10 people who are like really diehard fans of Watch Dogs, who have been telling me for a while they want to see more Watch Dogs videos, and before I even played Watch Dogs, they tell me they wanted to see it. So I mean, I'm just saying, I know a lot of people who would be very excited for a new Watch Dogs game. Maybe just like not enough for a complete market though.
Let's go back to where it all started. E3 2012. Ubisoft put out a demo of Watch Dogs 1 that looked insane at the time, and I mean even today, it still looks quite impressive. There was dynamic lighting, realistic weather, and you know, these very lifelike animations. It just felt like something from the future, like Ubisoft had created something that could stand beside Grand Theft Auto 5 and say yes, but what if you could hack everything? People in the crowd were impressed. The comment sections and reaction videos were shocking. It felt like a big thing at the time. For the next 2 years, Watch Dogs was everywhere. Trailers.
Can we just talk about that for a second? I know I'm pausing hella randomly. If you want to read the comments, this is the perfect time for that. But real spiel, I feel like an online mode could have saved Watch Dogs. The amount of stuff you can do in Watch Dogs is absolutely insane, but you have to follow the story. They literally give you like, okay, you can go talk to that one person over there, you can go talk to that one person, you can hack that one person, but you can't really do what the hell you want. And GTA Online, GTA 5 Online at least, you can go anywhere you want, even though you're following the story, right? I think if they did a little bit more of that, gave you a little bit more you could do, right? You could go buy a house, you could go buy a new phone, you could go buy some upgrades. Instead of just like having a panel where you have a skill tree, making you actually go place to upgrade your skills to go buy stuff, it would have gave the game so much more longevity. I'm just saying.
Like a big thing at the time. For the next 2 years, Watch Dogs was everywhere. Trailers, demos, interviews, you name it. But here's where it all started to go wrong. The infamous demo was what the industry calls a vertical slice. Basically a handcrafted segment of the game running on a super high-end PC, designed to show what the game could look like, not necessarily what it would look like. At the time, the average gamer did not know that. Most of us took it at face value. We thought what we saw was what we'd get. But by the time Watch Dogs actually released in 2014, the final game did not look anything like the E3 2012. Now, it was not horrendously bad visually, but it was a noticeable decline in what we saw.
Are we say the 2012 E3 looks better than PC Final? Cause I'm just gonna put it out there right now. And my blind audience, this does not look 100 times better. But y'all want more like a dark vintage look? Cause this looks way worse. This looks like it came from 2012. This looks like it was dropped in 2017. This is comparable to games like Just Cause 3. I'm gonna put it out there right now. That is the first thing that comes to mind when I see something like this. And then a game like this, maybe you can say a Tomb Raider? I don't know.
It was not horrendously bad visually, but it was a noticeable decline in what we saw. The graphics had been downgraded massively, the lighting was flatter, the textures weren't as sharp, and overall it just looked kind of ordinary, and a lot of people noticed. Worse still, modders later discovered that some of the original E3 graphical settings were still in the game's files, just disabled. I'm pretty sure you can download an E3 restoration mod, I believe, so that's always nice to know. But when this all happened back in 2014, the backlash was massive. Reddit forums and YouTube exploded with side-by-side comparisons. In fact, the term downgrade at that time became synonymous with Watch Dogs. What was once the most anticipated game in years became a kind of meme, if you will. And you have to realize this was during a time when Ubisoft were on top. Around that time.
Now this is looking good. If you're telling me what we have now is a downgrade from this, I am 100% with you. This is looking beautiful right here. The sun is moving with them. The shadows are looking perfect. The graphics are unbelievable. Like the motion blur is insane. If you're telling me this is what they were expecting, okay, I'm with y'all 100%.
And they released Assassin's Creed Black Flag. They released Far Cry 4. And everybody loved Ubisoft. Now, to be fair, Watch Dogs 1 was not bad at all. In fact, it was a great foundation for a game. I actually made a full video on Watch Dogs 1 if you're curious about my deeper thoughts on the game itself. But the thing is, being a good game did not matter at that time. It just did not live up to what was promised. And by then, the damage was already done. The trust was broken. The CEO of Ubisoft, Yves Guillemot, even admitted years later that the company raised expectations too high. He said the ambition of the project with its new engine, seamless multiplayer, mobile connectivity and massive open world was probably too much for a first attempt. And in a way, he was not wrong. Because while Watch Dogs 1 was a commercial success, selling millions of copies and breaking Ubisoft's day one sale records, it was also the start of a major trust issue between Ubisoft and their audience, one that I'm sure we all know is clearly still ongoing. And
are we saying that Yves Saint Laurent, the CEO of Ubisoft, admitted that him breaking the trust of the fans was a misstep? Because if that's what I'm hearing right now, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Congratulations to my boy Yves, man. That is like the most profound thing I've ever heard. Not a lot of CEOs are like willing to admit something like that, but if he really did, you know, maybe Ubisoft deserves a second chance. And clearly, they've been getting it because I'm pretty sure, what was it? Primal did pretty good. Far Cry Primal. The new Assassin's Creed, I'm pretty sure that one was going crazy right now. Obviously, the videos aren't like getting pumped out as much. But when it first dropped, I think it's Assassin's Creed Shadow with the Black Samurai. People were loving it. So I feel like they're back in the good graces of the community.
Issue between Ubisoft and their audience, one that I'm sure we all know is clearly still ongoing, and the company is definitely in its worst state right now. Years and years of mistrust and controversy led to what Ubisoft are currently in, and hey, it's deserved.
I'm not a big Ubisoft fan, so obviously I wouldn't know the most, but like, from what I've seen, the community still messing with them. They still have a strong community, like, as a company.
Hey, it's deserved.
Maybe I'm tweaking though.
Say what you want about the original Watch Dogs as a game, but there is one thing that stuck in everybody's minds at that time, and that was Aiden Pearce. He was or is the face of the franchise. A vigilante hacker wearing a trench coat and just a full-on traumatic character, walking the line between a hero and a menace. And whether you loved him or could not stand him, there is no denying that he defined what people thought Watch Dogs was. A man driven by the loss of his niece and willing to do whatever it took to get revenge. He was cold, paranoid, and constantly watching everyone around him, and in that sense, he fit the world perfectly. Aiden's character was not meant to come across as likable, but instead believable. He felt like somebody who had lived through hell and came out more machine than man. Now, was his personality overly depressing at times? Sure, but that was the point. This was not a character that I like to think was meant to crack jokes or lead a team, similar to Watch Dogs 2 and DedSec. He was a lone wolf, and with the themes of the first game being about surveillance, a darker Chicago, and just corruption, I like to say his personality made a lot of sense. The problem is, not everybody was ready for that kind of character at the time. Aiden Pearce was often criticized as bland or one-dimensional, but that's always been up for debate, because...
Can I interject right here, boys? I would never say Aiden Pearce was one-dimensional or bland, The amount of emotion he exerted, showed to the people, expressed while he was trying to save his sister was unmatched, man. I don't think I personally have ever played a game where the character shows that much emotion and follows through with it. He's a bad man, He is an absolute demon. The guy who kidnapped his sister is telling his sister, oh, your brother's a demon. You don't even really know him for real. The news is talking about him, about how much of a demon he is. The kids don't want to be like him when they grow up because he's a vigilante, but not a good one, How much more do you want? How much more could they add to the game to not make it bland? Y'all just want something to complain about.
This was often criticized as bland or one-dimensional, but that's always been up for debate. Because while he did not talk much, the game world did a lot of the storytelling for him. Through audio logs, CCTV footage, and phone hacks, we learned who Aiden Pearce really was and what drove him. Ubisoft clearly took note of his lasting appeal too. Years later, they brought him back in Watch Dogs Legion with the Bloodline DLC. And honestly, that expansion reminded me just how great he really was.
He's looking mad older though.
After the backlash surrounding the first Watch Dogs and the mistrust, Ubisoft had a choice. Either double down on what they had or start fresh. And in 2016 they took a risk. They flipped the tone, changed the setting, brought in a brand new protagonist and completely redefined what Watch Dogs could be. The result was the creation of Watch Dogs 2. And for a lot of people, including myself, this is the best Watch Dogs game to release in my opinion. We got introduced to Marcus Holloway, a new protagonist who was very, and I mean very different to somebody like an Aiden Pearce. He brought energy and humanity to the franchise. Where Aiden was quiet and tormented, Marcus was charismatic and funny, and yet his story still had weight. His journey with DedSec wasn't like the first game at all, where the focus was on personal revenge, but it was more built on the idea that we need to expose corruption, and in a way stand up for freedom in a world being swallowed by data. And
that sounds like the most woke thing you could say. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. Usually people hate wokeness in film and media, but for some reason this just works so well. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. It's probably just the medium they presented it through, A comedic black guy who was really cool, Aiden Pearce, no one can say he was cool. He was probably the least cool person out there, but he was respectable. He went out there and did what he had to do to get his sister back, right? Maybe that's why. That's just my opinion on it, wokeness might work if you do it properly.
Need to expose corruption and in a way stand up for freedom in a world being swallowed by data. And speaking of DedSec, this version of the group is way different and it felt like a real team. Sitara, Wrench, Josh, the crew had chemistry and were written very well. Well, except for Horatio. I thought Ubisoft did a terrible job with his character. But you know, somebody like a Wrench is easily one of the most beloved characters in the Watch Dogs franchise. The actual world of Watch Dogs 2 was also a massive change from Chicago. San Francisco was bright, colorful and alive. The hacking tools were expanded, the drone and the RC jumper made stealth feel more different.
Is that an addition, you know? Chicago's one of those big gloomy cities with a lot of buildings, right? San Francisco's one of those more open cities with like bike riders and women doing yoga. So maybe location does have something to add. Obviously in the next game, Legions, they went to London, right? I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I don't know what he's gonna say about that, but in my opinion, London's probably like almost as bad, if not worse, than somewhere like obviously a Chicago, right? Maybe if they ever bring this series back, they gotta choose a more open, warm location. Maybe they take it to Mexico City, they hit a Texas, they hit somewhere bigger, Australia, Sydney. Sydney could be cool. I'm just putting some suggestions out there. Even a Cape Town could be fire.
And alive. The hacking tools were expanded, the drone and the RC jumper made stealth feel more different, and mission design finally leaned into creativity and freedom. You know, funnily enough, even though critics praised the game and people who actually gave it a shot loved it, it did not take off the way Ubisoft hoped. Why? Well, the answer is simple. Watch Dogs 1 burned people. The overpromising, the graphical downgrade, the mistrust. It all left a bad taste. So when the sequel dropped, most people just did not trust the franchise anymore. A lot of people were not coming back for the second game. So even though the first game sold incredibly well, and even though the series looked like a success on paper, underneath the foundation was shaky. The hype for Watch Dogs was built on a fantasy, and when reality kicked in, the fallout would impact the franchise for years to come. And that is the tragedy, because to me, Watch Dogs 2 was a fantastic game, easily one of Ubisoft's most polished open world games. But by the time people figured that out, the momentum was gone. It took years for it to reach over 10 million copies sold. And Ubisoft, being Ubisoft, did not look at the quality of the game, because in true fashion they looked at numbers, and to them the slow start was a warning sign. So even though Watch Dogs 2 was a fantastic game, it never got the recognition it deserved. Not because it failed, far from it, but because the franchise's reputation was already hanging by a thread.
I think what I'm hearing right now is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I have been pretty confused in this entire video right now, but all they're saying is the distrust of the community is what made Watch Dogs fail. As I said a little bit earlier, I kind of disagree. Currently, obviously back then probably, yeah, after Watch Dogs 1, Watch Dogs 2 is dropping, I'm probably not going to spend money earlier. I'm going to wait for somebody to do a Let's Play and I'm going to see, okay, this game seems like it could be cool, I'll try it out, you know? But it seems like he's just saying the community doesn't trust them, so they failed. And Watch Dogs was looking at numbers too much instead of what really matters. Let's keep watching though, and hopefully he can actually explain it a little bit better.
After 2 games with some pretty cool protagonists and clear identities, Ubisoft decided to take Watch Dogs in a new direction. Enter Watch Dogs Legion. This game was released in 2020 and was marketed as the most ambitious game yet. The big selling point was that you could play as anybody. Literally any NPC that you saw walking around London could be recruited into DedSec and become your playable character. A construction worker, a spy, a grandma in a mobility scooter. If they existed in the game as NPCs, you could make them a part of your team. When I first saw the trailers and marketing, I thought this idea was incredible and revolutionary. No set main character, no single story path, just a massive cast of procedurally generated operatives with unique abilities. I would have also said unique voice lines, but let's be honest, the voice acting was terrible. You'd have a man from India sounding like he was an old white lady, you'd have a white man sounding South. It was just a mix, it just didn't sound right. So how did this interesting concept go for the game? Well, it completely backfired, because the moment you remove a main character, you also risk removing emotional weight, and that's exactly what happened. Without a main character to ground the story, Watch Dogs Legion struggled to tell an interesting one. The operatives you recruited had no real interesting backstories or character growth, no deep motivation, just a random background blurb and a voice filter that barely passed for variety. And while the city of London was beautifully built, in fact I do think Watch Dogs Legion's depiction of London is incredible, and as somebody that lived in London for a few years, they nailed it, but it felt empty, as most Ubisoft open worlds tend to be nowadays.
Literally what I said a little bit earlier, bruh. The game needs to, I mean, I guess he's kind of saying it's more open world now, right? So you could do more of what you want. I'm talking about like a sandbox type of game, you know? You could go where you want, you could do what you want, but they have to put more effort into their game, you know? If you're going to drop and take a nice solid decade, make it nice. Add a cinema that you can actually go and watch movies in. Have like 5 or 10 different movies on rotate so we can actually watch a real movie, you know? Have an arcade where you can actually play games. Add stores that you can actually go in. Because that's the problem with GTA 5. There were a good amount of stores, like there were a handful, but there just weren't enough. So GTA 6, they're trying to work on that. Hopefully y'all can do the same thing, because that really would make the game a lot better.
Now, not empty in terms of content, but as in soul and the actual personal stake for any of the characters. There was not a single character in that entire game to care about. Well, actually I lied, there's two. The first one is Bagley, the sarcastic AI companion who ended up stealing the spotlight by default, and he was a bloody robot. And also Sky Larson, because I remember she had a very emotional quest and it was definitely memorable. But apart from that, it felt very generic. Critically, Watch Dogs Legion received mixed to average reviews. Most outlets praised the idea but criticized the execution as expected. It holds a score in the low 70s on Metacritic compared to Watch Dogs 2's solid 82. The common sentiment was the same: great concept, lacking soul. And
that's not bad. It's the first time they're trying it. I don't know too many games who have tried a concept like this before. You can literally be anybody. Not just like they give you a handful of people like main. Anybody in the game, you can be them as like the main character. So I'm just putting out there right now, the low 70s is beautiful. That is literally exactly where you should expect to be. Let's be honest.
In terms of sales for Watch Dogs Legion, well, Ubisoft never really released official numbers. In fact, I could be mistaken on this part, but I'm pretty sure this was the moment Ubisoft stopped saying copies sold and focused on saying players gained or X amount of players. It's a bit sly of them, don't you think? But while they did not say any numbers for Legion, there are insiders and analysts that suggest Legion underperformed. While it saw a decent launch, boosted by being a cross-gen title for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, momentum very quickly died. By early 2021, Ubisoft had already started shifting focus away from Legion, cutting off planned multiplayer expansions and future content updates. Now,
come on, bro, that's what you need to focus on. The multiplayer in the game, it just could be absolutely amazing. The amount of gadgets we have, like, you could make a GTA with extra gadgets. Do you understand how wild that would be, my boy? Yo, boys are missing out on an absolutely amazing moment right there. And the combat from what we just saw before looks absolutely beautiful, dog. You had everything going for y'all.
Enough, not long after launch, they released Bloodline, a DLC expansion that brought back Aiden Pierce and Wrench, giving fans of the franchise a more traditional character-driven story. And would you look at that, surprise surprise, it was way better received than the main game. But by then the damage was already done. Watch Dogs Legion did not flop completely, but it definitely did underperform. It failed to give Ubisoft the kind of momentum they were clearly hoping for, and with little post-launch hype, the game quickly faded from conversations. And for the first time since 2014, Watch Dogs went silent. And the truth is, Legion did not kill the series by being awful. It killed it by being so incredibly forgettable. It had ambition, no doubt, but ambition does not mean so much without heart. And in trying to let you play as anybody, Watch Dogs Legion ended up with a bunch of characters that felt like nobody. Since
that's what happens when you have too many characters. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you, bro. If it's not one of those short games where it's like episodic and you can choose your path, it won't make sense to have a lot of different characters you can main, you know? I don't even know why they would try something like this. It is beautiful. A 75 for an attempt is great. I already said this earlier, but it was a stupid idea.
Legion, the franchise has gone completely silent. No sequel in development, no hint of what's coming next, just a once promising franchise that seems to have quietly exited the stage.
Like, who's supposed to be the face of that?
From breaking records in 2014 to complete silence in the years following Legion, Watch Dogs went from Ubisoft's big new flagship to one of their most neglected IPs. And what's strange is there wasn't really one dramatic crash or one headline making failure. The franchise did not explode, but instead it quietly fizzled out. And a lot of that comes down to one thing: the death of hype. Ubisoft, who I'm sure we all know, is a company known for chasing trends and changing focuses very, very fast. The post-Legion support was very short, future content dried up, and more importantly, no new Watch Dogs game has been teased since. Compare that to their other massive IPs such as Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and even The Crew, if you will. All of these continue to receive sequels, remakes, or reboots, but Watch Dogs is very quiet.
The Crew did almost as bad as Legion, bro. Don't do that, man. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I've told the story a couple of times. Back when The Crew 2 was dropping, I think Ubisoft had a thing on their website where they're like, okay, if you just put your email in here, will send you a beta copy or something, right? So I put my email in there. I got the beta copy, never played it. Like a year or two later, I started hearing about the crew again. I was like, oh, I forgot I even got that game. How was it? Everyone says booty. You didn't miss out on anything. I was like, damn, dude. I thought I missed out. I did not. It's that day.
22 has gone quiet. There is no strong fan base pushing for a revival. There's no major modding scene. There's no, big content on YouTube that does well. I mean, it's rare to even see the games being brought up in online discussions anymore, unless somebody's making a video about forgotten franchises. So is Watch Dogs dead? Well, officially no, but based on what we know from reliable information, it definitely seems like it. And unless Ubisoft decides to take a serious, meaningful swing at it again, whether it is a full reboot, a focused return to character-driven storytelling, it's hard to imagine a comeback. It's quite sad actually. What started as the most exciting new IP in a decade quietly became one of Ubisoft's most forgettable. And that right there is how Watch Dogs died.
I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. That was an absolutely amazing video right there. I feel like when we watched the reason the Telltales died, maybe the story was just more interesting, but it was way more gripping. The information was way more understandable and palatable. With a video like this, I was very confused half the time, man. I heard a couple of key points, like how they lost the trust of the community and how they really just looked at the money and not the quality of the game. But other than that, man, this wasn't great. I didn't feel anything from there. All I felt was, damn, it's time for me to finish Watch Dogs. So in the coming days, I will be bringing back the Watch Dogs Let's Play. But if you want me to react to anything, let me know in the comments. I'll see you next one, broskies. Do say.